You look around and you see the walls of your current life, the routine, the income, the relationships, the specific flavor of exhaustion that greets you every single morning. You believe you are trapped in a level of consciousness. You think the universe has stalled, or that you are simply not doing enough, not vibrating high enough, not trying hard enough to break through the invisible ceiling above your head. But you are not trapped. The dense, suffocating gravity pulling you down is not a punishment from the cosmos, and it is not a lack of effort on your part. You are carrying 7 seals, 7 ancient impressions etched into the fabric of your being, and each one is a death of your former ego waiting to happen. Think of Ivan. Ivan was a banker. He wore the armor of a man who controlled everything he touched. He sat in glass rooms high above the city, dictating terms, moving numbers that represented human lives, feeling the cold weight of power in his chest. He thought he had won the game. He believed his position was the pinnacle of evolution, the ultimate reward for his sharp mind and ruthless execution. He was trapped in Manipura, the center of ego, control, and fire. He didn't know it, but the power he wielded was a cage, the tight knot in his stomach, the constant need to dominate the room, the quiet terror of losing his grip. That was the seal. He was carrying a samskara, an inherited code demanding that he protect himself by conquering others. Then the market turned. The glass room shattered. Ivan fell hard and fast, stripped of his title, his accounts, his identity. The descent was violent. He hit the ground and felt the crush of humiliation. He was forced into anahata, the space of humility, of needing others, of realizing he was not a separate, untouchable God. His transformation was involuntary. The universe broke his seal by force. You feel it, don't you? The pressure in your own chest. The sensation that the skin you are wearing is too tight. You are not waiting for an escape route. You are waiting for permission to let the version of you that built this prison finally die. The seals you carry are not curses. They are the incarnated traumas of past lives, the samskaras you brought with you to resolve. You are the jailer, and the keys are the 7 seals. To evolve to your next level of consciousness, you do not need to climb. You need to descend into the weight of your own body, feel the armor you wear, and voluntarily choose the death of the ego that keeps it locked. Look down at your hands. Feel the pulse moving through the veins, the quiet rhythm of the blood, the density of the bone. You carry history in that flesh. You are not a blank slate, and you did not arrive here empty. The spiritual traditions of the East have known this for millennia, mapping the human architecture through what they call chakras, spinning wheels of energy, focal points of consciousness. But this is not a metaphor. This is the anatomy of your imprisonment. We call them the 7 seals. These seals are the physical and energetic manifestations of samskaras. Samskaras are impressions. They are the grooves worn into the record of your soul by repeated actions, unresolved traumas, and the emotional debts of past lives. Every time you died in fear, every time you lived in greed, every time you loved with attachment, you left a mark. You etched a pattern into your own energetic code. And when you returned, when you took this body, you brought those patterns with you. Modern neuroscience calls this epigenetics. They tell us that trauma alters the expression of our genes, that the starvation your ancestors endured, the wars they fought, the terrors they survived, they leave a chemical tag on your DNA. You inherit the fear. You inherit the instinct to hide, to fight, to hoard. The Vedic cosmology tells us the exact same thing, but it goes deeper. It says you are not just inheriting the trauma of your grandfather. You are inheriting your own trauma. You are the ancestor. You are the one who left the scars. The first seal sits at the base of your spine, Muladhara, the root. This is the seal of survival, of gravity, of the raw, animal instinct to stay alive. When this seal is locked, you live in a state of perpetual scarcity. You look at your bank account and feel a cold sweat. no matter how much money is there. You look at your partner and feel the creeping dread of abandonment. You cling to the physical world because you believe it is the only thing keeping you from falling into the abyss. The samskara here is the inherited memory of starvation, of being hunted, of dying without shelter. To break this seal, you must confront the illusion of security. You must realize that the earth supports you, not because you grip it tightly, but because gravity holds you without your permission. Move up, just below the navel, Swadhisthana, the sacral seal. This is the water center, the domain of desire, pleasure, and the relentless hunger for sensation. When this seal is active and unresolved, you are consumed by cravings. You chase the next dopamine hit, the next relationship, the next glass of wine, the next distraction. You scroll through the lives of others, feeling the hollow ache of comparison. The samskara here is the memory of deprivation, the lifetime spent wanting what you could not have. It is the ego trying to fill an infinite void with finite things. Breaking this seal requires the death of the hungry ghost. It demands that you sit in the silence of your own discomfort and let the craving burn itself out. Then comes the fire, Manipura, the solar plexus. This was Ivan's prison. This is the seal of power, of will, of the ego asserting its dominance over the world. When this seal is locked, life is a battlefield. You measure your worth by what you can control, by the titles you hold, by the submission of others. You mistake respect for fear. You build fortresses of logic and strategy, convinced that if you just plan well enough, you will never be hurt again. The samskara here is the memory of powerlessness, the lifetimes where you were the victim, the slave, the one who had no voice. To break the third seal, you must let the armor melt. You must surrender the need to control the outcome, which feels exactly like dying. Because to the ego, surrender is death. These first three seals are the anchors. They are the gravitational pull of the physical world. They are the reason you feel stuck. You keep circling the same arguments, the same financial panics, the same power struggles, because you are trying to solve a spiritual debt with physical currency. You cannot buy your way out of Muladhara. You cannot consume your way out of Swadhisthana. You cannot conquer your way out of Manipura. The universe will not let you. Remember, Ivan, the universe watched him build his glass tower, watched him fortify his third seal with millions of dollars and ruthless ambition. And the universe, in its terrifying compassion, shattered the tower. It forced him to fall, because the universe is not interested in your comfort. It is interested in your evolution. It will create the exact conditions necessary to break the seal you are refusing to open. If you will not voluntarily let the ego die, the cosmos will arrange a death for you. A bankruptcy, a divorce, a sudden illness, a collapse of the identity you worked so hard to build. This is the plot point of your own life. You are standing at the threshold. You are looking at the recurring patterns of your existence. The same betrayals, the same anxieties, the same exhaustion. And you are realizing that they are not external events happening to you. They are the samskaras asking to be resolved. They are the seals demanding to be broken. You are not trapped. You are the jailer, and the only way out is through the fire. The only way to evolve to the next level of consciousness is to stop running from the pain of the seals and turn toward it. You must become the witness to your own imprisonment. You must feel the inherited fear in your root, the insatiable desire in your sacral, the desperate need for control in your solar plexus. And you must say, I see you. I acknowledge the debt, but I will not carry it into the next life. This is the alignment. This is the moment you stop fighting the gravity and begin to understand how to use it. The descent is the only way up. Before we move into the heart, into the upper seals where the air gets thin and the ego begins to suffocate, pause for a moment. Look at your own life. Which of the first three seals is holding you right now? Is it the fear of survival, the endless loop of desire, or the exhausting need for control? Leave a comment below. Name your prison. The moment you name it, the lock begins to turn. The air changes when you cross the threshold. The gravity that pulled you into the earth, into the survival of the root, the hunger of the sacral, and the fire of the solar plexus, begins to shift. You are entering the chest, Anahata, the fourth seal, the center of the heart. But do not mistake this for softness. Do not mistake this for the passive, pastel-colored love sold in weekend spiritual retreats. The heart is an anvil. It is the place where the armored ego is placed and hammered until it breaks. Think back to Ivan, the banker who lost his glass tower. When the market collapsed and his title was stripped away, he did not float gracefully into enlightenment. He crashed into Anahata. He was forced into the heart. He found himself sitting in a sterile waiting room of a public hospital, waiting for a diagnosis for a stress-induced condition he could no longer afford to treat privately. He looked at the people around him, people he would have previously considered invisible, statistics, numbers on a spreadsheet. For the first time in his life, he felt the terrifying vulnerability of being just like them. He felt the cold draft of the room, the hard plastic of the chair, the shared unspoken terror of human fragility. This is the seal of Anahata. It is the realization that your separateness is an illusion. When this seal is locked, you live in the fortress of the isolated self. You believe that your pain is unique, that your success is entirely your own, and that you must protect your energy from the contamination of others. The samskara here is the inherited memory of betrayal. It is the lifetime where you trusted and were destroyed for it. It is the deep cellular conviction that to open the chest is to invite a blade. So you build a ribcage of steel. You interact with the world through transactions. You give only to receive. You love only those who reflect your own value back to you. But Anahata demands a death. It demands the death of the transactional ego. To break this seal, you must feel the weight of another person's suffering as if it were your own. You must sit in the hospital waiting room of existence and recognize that the breathing, fragile bodies around you are not obstacles, not competitors, and not resources. They are you, wearing different skin. Ivan's descent was involuntary. He was pushed into the heart by the collapse of his power. The universe broke his third seal with a sledgehammer, and the debris fell into his chest. You do not have to wait for the sledgehammer. You can choose the descent. You can feel the tightness in your sternum, the instinct to close off when someone asks for more than you are willing to give, and you can deliberately soften the muscle. You can let the blade in, because the secret of Anahata is that the blade does not kill you. It only kills the armor. The heart itself, the energetic center of your being, is indestructible. It is the engine of the cosmos. When the fourth seal breaks, the gravity reverses. You are no longer pulled down by the need to survive. You are pulled outward by the magnetic force of shared existence. You stop asking, "How can I protect myself?" And you begin to ask, "How can I serve the whole?" This transition is excruciating. It feels like a loss of identity. Because who are you if you are not the one fighting for your piece of the pie? Who are you if you are not the victim of your past or the hero of your own isolated narrative? The ego screams in Anahata. It throws tantrums. It tries to drag you back down to the fire of the solar plexus, back to the safety of control. It whispers that if you open, you will be consumed. You will be drained. You will disappear. Let it scream. Let the ego thrash in the center of the chest. The death of the isolated self is the prerequisite for the birth of the universal self. You must let the version of you that kept score finally die. And as the chest opens, as the iron doors of Anahata give way, the energy rises into the throat. Vishuddha, the fifth seal, the center of communication, of truth, of the voice that shapes reality. When you arrive at the throat, the air is thin. The density of the physical world is far below you. But the challenge here is sharper, more precise. Vishuddha is not about speaking your mind. It is not about shouting your opinions on the internet or dominating a conversation. The fifth seal is the seal of resonance. It is the alignment between what you know in your core and what you manifest in the physical world through sound. When this seal is locked, your voice is a tool of manipulation. You say what needs to be said to keep the peace, to maintain control, to hide your true intentions. You swallow your truth so often that it becomes a physical lump in your throat. You feel the tension in your vocal cords, the stiffness in your jaw, the chronic ache in your neck. The samskara here is the memory of persecution. It is the lifetimes where speaking the truth meant exile, torture, or the pyre. It is the inherited terror of being seen and heard for what you actually are. So you wear masks. You adapt your frequency to match the room. You become the chameleon, vibrating at the exact pitch required to survive the environment. But every time you suppress the truth of your being, you add another layer of lead to the fifth seal. You choke your own evolution. To break Vishuddha, you must confront the terror of authenticity. You must be willing to let the false narratives you have constructed about yourself die. This is not a metaphorical death. It is the literal dismantling of the stories you tell your family, your colleagues, and yourself. It is the terrifying moment when you sit across from your partner and say the words that will shatter the comfortable illusion you have both been living in. It is the moment you look at the career you built with the fire of the third seal and admit out loud that it means nothing to you. The throat is the bridge between the heart and the mind. It is where the unnameable truths of Anahata are translated into the physical vibration of sound. If the heart is open but the throat is closed, the truth rots inside you. It turns into resentment, into physical illness, into the slow decay of a life lived in half measures. Ivan felt this rot. Even after his fall, even after he learned the humility of the heart, he struggled with the throat. He took a job teaching financial literacy to low-income families. He was serving. He was operating from Anahata. But when his old colleagues, the men who still ruled the glass towers, invited him to dinner, he felt the lump form. He sat at the expensive table, listening to them talk about acquisitions and leverage, and he smiled. He nodded. He swallowed the disconnect he felt. He allowed them to believe he was just going through a rough patch, that he would eventually claw his way back to the top. He protected their comfort at the expense of his own truth. He left the dinner feeling as though he had swallowed glass. The physical sensation was undeniable. The throat chakra, Vishuddha, was rejecting the lie. The samskara of hiding, of adapting to survive the judgment of the powerful, was demanding to be broken. You know this feeling. You know the exact sensation of the swallowed truth. It sits right behind the Adam's apple. It tightens the breath. It makes your voice sound thin, slightly higher in pitch, disconnected from the deep resonance of the chest. You are vibrating at a frequency that is not your own. To break the fifth seal, you must let the chameleon die. You must accept that speaking your true frequency will cause disruption. It will alienate people. It will end relationships. It will burn down the structures that were built on the foundation of your silence. The ego is terrified of this fire. The ego wants to be liked. It wants to belong to the tribe. It remembers the cold of exile, and it begs you to just keep quiet, to just play along. But evolution does not negotiate with the ego's need for comfort. To move to the next level of consciousness, your external reality must become an exact, unfiltered reflection of your internal state. There can be no gap between the heart and the voice. You must vibrate with the cosmic gravity of absolute sincerity. When you finally speak the truth, when you let the resonant sound of your actual being vibrate through your vocal cords and into the air, the seal shatters. The relief is physical. The jaw relaxes. The neck lengthens. The energy, no longer trapped in the throat, rushes upward into the skull. You have survived the earth. You have survived the water, the fire, the air, and the sound. You have let the hungry ghost die. You have let the tyrant die. You have let the isolated self die. You have let the chameleon die. You are lighter now. The armor is falling away piece by piece, left on the floor of the lower seals. You look at the world around you, and you see the tragedy of humanity. You see billions of people locked in the lower seals, fighting over resources, consumed by desires, destroying each other for power. You see them wearing their inherited armor, completely unaware that the metal they carry is crushing them. You see them trapped in the illusion of separation, believing that their pain is theirs alone. And you realize that you cannot save them by telling them they are trapped. You cannot argue someone out of Muladhara. You cannot debate someone out of Manipura. The seals do not respond to logic. They respond only to resonance. The only way to pull the world upward is to become the vacuum. When you break your own seals, when you let your ego die at every level, you create a localized pocket of zero gravity. Your presence becomes a mirror. When a person locked in the third seal of power interacts with you, and you do not react with fear or submission, when you simply hold the open space of the heart, their armor becomes suddenly unbearably heavy. They feel the contrast. They feel the exhaustion of their own defense mechanisms. This is how consciousness evolves, not through preaching, not through force, but through the silent gravitational pull of a being who has voluntarily died and been reborn. You are the ancestor now. The epigenetic code you are writing in this lifetime is the code of liberation. Every time you choose to feel the pain instead of numbing it, every time you choose to speak the truth instead of hiding it, every time you choose to surrender instead of controlling, you are breaking the chain. You are telling the cellular memory of your lineage that the war is over. You are standing in the center of the mirror circle. You look back at the beginning, at the routine, the exhaustion, the feeling of being trapped. You see now that the trap was never the external world. The trap was the refusal to let the old self die. The descent through the 7 seals is not a climb up a ladder. It is a fall into the density of your own incarnation. It is the willingness to feel the crushing weight of the human experience and to let that weight break you open, because what is inside the shell is infinite. What is inside the shell cannot be harmed, cannot be diminished, and cannot be destroyed. The ego is terrified of the descent. It screams that if you let go, you will fall into the abyss. But the truth of the cosmos is this: when you finally stop fighting the gravity, when you finally let go of the ledge and allow yourself to fall into the absolute depths of your own being, you do not hit the ground. You hit the sky. You realize that the floor you were so terrified of hitting was just another illusion, another projection of a mind desperate for boundaries. The deeper you go into the core of your own trauma, the more expansive the space becomes. The inherited fears that felt like solid walls in Muladhara are revealed to be nothing more than smoke when exposed to the light of Sahasrara. This is the cosmic joke. You spent lifetimes building fortresses to protect a self that never actually existed in the way you thought it did. You carried the stones of karma, building walls thicker and higher, convinced that safety lay in separation. But true safety is the absence of walls. True safety is the realization that there is nothing left to defend. When you sit in the silence of the open crown, the physical body does not disappear. The heart still beats. The blood still flows. The bills still need to be paid. The relationships still require attention. But the texture of reality is fundamentally altered. You are no longer the victim of these circumstances. You are the space in which they occur. You look at Ivan. If he had remained in the golden cage of Ajna, he would have spent the rest of his life as a spiritual teacher, accumulating followers, feeding a new, more sophisticated ego. But Ivan kept going. He let the spiritual ego die too. He stopped talking about chakras. He stopped trying to awaken his former colleagues. He simply lived. He took a quiet job. He tended to a small garden. He spoke softly. But the people who interacted with him felt an inexplicable peace. They felt a gravity around him that pulled their own anxieties to the ground. He had become the vacuum. This is the requirement of the vertical depth. You do not ascend to escape the world. You ascend so that you can return to the world and anchor the light in the density of matter. You break the seals so that the infinite can finally pour into the finite. The descent is complete. The seals are broken. The ego has died its 7 deaths. But the universe is a circle, and the moment of ultimate realization is also the moment of ultimate confrontation, because now you must face the final test. You must look at the totality of your existence and decide if you are willing to let the old world burn completely. You are standing on the banks of the Ganges. The city of Varanasi stretches out behind you, ancient, chaotic, vibrating with the raw, unfiltered pulse of life and death. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke, marigolds, and burning flesh. This is not a metaphor. This is the physical manifestation of the threshold you are crossing. In Varanasi, the fires of the cremation ghats have been burning continuously for thousands of years. They never go out. They are the eternal engine of transformation, turning the dense matter of the physical body into ash and smoke, releasing the soul from its final attachment. You must look at the fire. You must look at the body being placed on the pyre, and you must understand that the body is yours. The dark night of the soul is not a period of sadness. It is not a bout of depression or a string of bad luck. It is the terrifying, claustrophobic moment when the ego realizes that it cannot survive the transition. It is the moment you look at the life you have built, the relationships, the career, the beliefs, the carefully constructed identity, and you realize that none of it can cross the river with you. The seals are broken. The gravity has shifted, but the ego is clinging to the shore. It is screaming, begging you to turn back, to rebuild the walls, to find another way. It tells you that if you let go of the identity you have worn for so long, you will cease to exist. It tells you that the fire will annihilate you completely, and the ego is right. The version of you that is terrified of the fire must be annihilated. The version of you that operates from the survival instinct of Muladhara, the hunger of Swadhisthana, the control of Manipura, the isolation of Anahata, the deception of Vishuddha, and the arrogance of Ajna, that version must burn. This is the law of apoptosis. Biology understands what the spiritual ego tries to deny. Apoptosis is programmed cell death. It is the mechanism by which the body clears out old, damaged, or unnecessary cells to make way for new growth. When a cell refuses to die, when it rebels against the law of apoptosis and insists on endless, uncontrolled replication, we do not call it eternal life. We call it cancer. The spiritual equivalent of cancer is the reincarnated ego. It is the accumulation of samskaras, the endless repetition of inherited trauma, the refusal to let the old identity dissolve. When you refuse to undergo the symbolic death of the ego, you become a spiritual tumor. You consume the energy of the people around you. You manipulate your environment to sustain your illusion of control. You drain the cosmic system to feed a localized, isolated self. To heal the system, the tumor must die. You feel the heat of the pyre now. The flames are licking at the edges of your identity. You look at your attachments. You look at the specific person you believe you cannot live without. You look at the bank account balance that dictates your sense of safety. You look at the title on your business card, the respect of your peers, the story you tell yourself about your own victimhood or your own heroism. Throw it in the fire. It feels like madness. The intellect, the remnant of the sixth seal, tries to intervene. It tries to negotiate a partial surrender. It says, I will let go of the fear, but let me keep the control. I will let go of the desire, but let me keep the spiritual pride. The fire does not negotiate. The fire is absolute. This is the breaking point. This is the moment you must confront the physical sensation of surrender. You are not just listening to words. You are feeling the exact location in your body where you are holding on. Is it the tight grip in the jaw, the shallow breath in the chest, the knot in the stomach? Breathe into it and let the grip fail. Let the identity collapse. Let the fear of what happens next completely wash over you. If you lose the relationship, let it be lost. If you lose the status, let it be stripped away. If you lose the certainty of who you are, let the confusion swallow you whole. Because the death of the ego is not the end. It is the beginning. When the body on the pyre is finally reduced to ash, when the last remnants of the physical form are swept into the river, the soul does not vanish. It is liberated. It is no longer bound by the density of the earth. It is no longer subject to the gravity of the lower seals. You experience this liberation physically. The moment the ego stops fighting the fire, the suffering stops. The pain of the burn was never the fire itself. The pain was the resistance to the fire. The moment you surrender, the heat transforms into light. The suffocating atmosphere of the dark night shatters, and you are left in a state of ringing clarity. You are empty. But this emptiness is not a void. It is a plenum. It is a space so completely devoid of the isolated self that it can finally hold the entirety of the cosmos. You look around, and the world has not changed, but the eyes looking at it are no longer yours. They are the eyes of the universe, looking back at itself. Ivan felt this emptiness when he finally let the spiritual ego die, when he stopped trying to be the awakened teacher and simply allowed himself to be the silent vacuum. He experienced the true rebirth. He was walking through a crowded market. The noise, the smells, the chaotic press of bodies. It was the exact environment that used to trigger his need for control, his disgust, his desire to escape to the glass tower. But this time, there was no Ivan to be triggered. There was only the market. There was only the movement of life, playing out in its infinite chaotic beauty. He felt the exact same love for the beggar on the street as he felt for the memory of his own children. He felt the exact same peace in the dirt as he once sought in the sterile heights of his power. The seals were gone. The inherited trauma was resolved. The samskaras had been burned in the fire of absolute surrender. He had evolved to the next level of consciousness, and he realized that the next level was not a place above the world. It was the world itself, experienced without the filter of the ego. You are standing in that same market. You are looking at your own life. The routine, the income, the relationships, the walls that you thought were a prison. The walls are still there, but the jailer is dead. You can walk right through them, because the walls were never made of stone. They were made of your own unresolved history. They were made of the epigenetic echoes of starvation, betrayal, and powerlessness. And now those echoes are silent. The silence is deafening. It is the sound of a bloodline healing. It is the sound of 1,000 ancestors breathing a collective sigh of relief, because the chain has finally been broken. You did not just liberate yourself. You liberated the entire lineage that flows through your veins. You went into the fire for them. This is the supreme ordeal. You have faced the absolute terror of annihilation, and you have discovered that what you truly are cannot be annihilated. You are the consciousness that watches the fire. You are the awareness that remains when the ashes are swept away. But the climax of this descent requires one final, brutal act of honesty. You must look at the ashes. You must look at the remnants of the ego you just surrendered, and you must not mourn it. You must not feel nostalgia for the pain that made you feel special. You must not miss the drama of the lower seals. The ego will try one last trick. It will try to resurrect itself as the survivor. It will try to build a new identity around the fact that you have endured the fire. Look at me, it will whisper. Look at how much I have suffered. Look at how evolved I am. If you listen to that whisper, the ashes will ignite. The seals will begin to reform. The gravity will return. You must sweep the ashes into the river without a second glance. You must step out of the cremation ground and walk back into the city, completely anonymous, completely unburdened by the story of your own transformation. The true mark of the highest level of consciousness is absolute ordinariness. It is the ability to chop wood and carry water without a single thought of how spiritual you are being. It is the ability to love without requiring the object of your love to validate your existence. It is the ability to wield power, if power is required, without the slightest attachment to the outcome. You are no longer a person trying to evolve. You are evolution itself, operating through a human body. Feel the physical reality of this state. The breath is deep, moving all the way down to the root, but the root is no longer clenched in fear. The energy flows freely up through the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, the brow, and out through the open crown. You are a clear channel. You are a hollow reed. The universe is playing its music through you, and you are not trying to change the tune. This is what it means to be alive. Everything before this was just a rehearsal. Everything before this was just the dense preparation of the instrument. You have arrived at the end of the dark night. The dawn is breaking over the Ganges. The fires are still burning, but they are no longer burning you. You are the light. If you have felt the heat of this fire, if you recognize the seals you have been carrying and you are finally ready to let them burn, do not walk away from the pyre alone. Subscribe to the channel. Join the silent few who are choosing the descent, who are willing to face the death of the ego to anchor a new frequency on this earth. We are breaking the inherited chains together. The fire does not stop at the edge of your skin. It moves inward, devouring the invisible architecture that holds the illusion together. You feel the heat consuming the archives of your memory. Every slight, every betrayal, every moment of perceived injustice that you hoarded as proof of your own victimhood, it is turning to smoke. The armored narratives of who wronged you, of what you deserved and did not get, of the cosmic unfairness of your specific incarnation, watch them burn. The ego screams louder now, because its currency is being destroyed. The ego trades in grievances. It builds its fortress out of the stones of unhealed wounds. When the fire of absolute surrender touches those stones, they do not merely crack, they vaporize. The heat is unbearable precisely because it demands total disarmament. You cannot take a single weapon into the next level of consciousness. You cannot take a single shield. You are standing naked in the center of the inferno, and you are realizing the most terrifying truth of the spiritual path. The pain you suffered was real, but the identity you built around that pain is a lie. Let the lie burn. Let the heat strip away the inherited pride, the genetic conviction that your lineage was uniquely cursed or uniquely blessed. The fire of Varanasi makes no distinction between the king and the beggar. The flames consume the silk and the rags with the exact same indifference. The cosmic fire does not care about the complexity of your trauma. It only cares about the purity of the space left behind. As the dense matter of the ego disintegrates, the gravity that held you to the earth fractures. You are no longer tethered to the physical manifestations of the lower seals. The relentless pull of Muladhara, demanding that you secure your survival at the expense of others, is gone. The insatiable vacuum of Swadhisthana, demanding that you consume the world to fill the void in your chest, is gone. The iron grip of Manipura, demanding that you control the outcome to avoid being crushed, is gone. You are falling, but there is no ground. This is the apex of the climax. It is the moment the physical body realizes it is not the container of consciousness, but merely a temporary lens through which consciousness focuses. The tension in your jaw, the tightness in your sternum, the knot in your stomach. They dissolve not because you have relaxed them, but because the entity that was holding them tight has ceased to exist. You are the space between the flames. You look at the pyre, and there is nothing left to mourn. The inherited chain is not just broken, it is incinerated. The epigenetic code of fear has been overwritten by the sheer, unadulterated force of the void. You are the ancestor who finally stopped running. You are the one who stood still in the center of the dark night and allowed the old world to end. The transition is absolute. The death is final. And what emerges from the ash is not a better version of you. It is not an upgraded, more spiritualized ego. What emerges is the vast, silent, indestructible presence of the cosmos itself. You have not evolved into a higher being. You have dissolved into the highest truth. The fire has done its work. The river waits to carry the dust away. The seals are gone. There is only the soul, vast and untethered, vibrating at the exact frequency of the universe. The ashes have settled. The river has taken what belongs to the earth. You are standing on the other side of the fire, and the silence is absolute. But this descent is not a straight line drawn from ignorance to enlightenment. It is not an escape velocity that shoots you out of the atmosphere, never to return. The path is a mirror circle. It is the infinite loop of consciousness exploring its own density. You look down at your hands again, the same hands you looked at in the beginning. The veins are still there. The pulse is still moving. The bone is still dense. You have not evaporated into pure light. You are still here, standing in the exact center of the physical world. But the texture of reality has fundamentally changed. Before the descent, you looked at the walls of your life, the routine, the income, the relationships, and you saw a prison. You saw the suffocating weight of the 7 seals pressing down on you. You believed that you were trapped in a specific level of consciousness, waiting for a cosmic elevator to lift you out. Now, you look at those same walls, and you see the architecture of the divine. You understand that the physical world is not a trap. It is the canvas. It is the dense material required for the soul to experience its own evolution. The exhaustion that greeted you every morning was not a punishment. It was the friction necessary to strike the match. The recurring patterns, the inherited traumas, the deep cellular fears, they were not curses. They were the raw material of your own liberation. You are no longer fighting the gravity. You have become the gravity. Think of the billions of souls currently incarnated on this planet. They are walking through the streets, sitting in traffic, staring at screens, completely consumed by the desperate need to survive, to conquer, to be seen. They are carrying the unbroken seals of their lineages. They are acting out the samskaras of thousands of years of human suffering. They are asleep inside the armor. You do not need to wake them up by shaking them. You do not need to stand on a pedestal and preach the mechanics of the chakras or the science of epigenetics. The universe does not evolve through instruction. It evolves through resonance. When you walk back into your life, completely unburdened by the ego that died in the fire, your mere presence alters the energetic field of every room you enter. When you sit across from a person who is locked in the fear of Muladhara, and you do not match their frequency of scarcity, when you simply hold the space of infinite abundance, you offer them a lifeline. You become the mirror in which they can finally see their own armor. When you interact with a person consumed by the power struggles of Manipura, and you refuse to engage in the battle, when you offer them the terrifying vulnerability of the open heart, you break the circuit. You short-wire their karma. This is the true purpose of evolving to the next level of consciousness. You do not do it to escape the world. You do it to become the anchor for the world. You become the localized point of zero gravity where the inherited chains of humanity can finally snap. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, you are performing a cosmic act. You are reaching back through time, down the long, bloody line of your ancestry, and you are healing the grandfather who starved, the grandmother who was silenced, the soldier who died in terror. The epigenetic code is rewritten in real time. The trauma stops with you, and you are reaching forward into the stretch of the future, ensuring that the souls who come after you will not have to carry the same stones. You are the bridge. You are the focal point where the past and the future dissolve into the eternal present. The 7 seals are no longer locks on a cage. They are the instruments of your expression. You use the root to ground yourself in the earth, honoring the physical body as the sacred vessel it is. You use the sacral to experience the beauty of the world, without the desperate need to consume it. You use the solar plexus to take action, to build, to create, without the ego's attachment to the result. You use the heart to love the entirety of existence, including the parts that are broken and bleeding. You use the throat to speak the absolute truth, knowing that the truth is the only frequency that lasts. You use the brow to see the divine in the mundane, dropping the illusion of the separate observer, and you leave the crown open so the infinite can pour through you, uninterrupted, forever. This is the loop. You have returned to the beginning, but the you who started the descent is dead. The jailer is gone. The prison has dissolved into thin air. You look around one last time. The specific flavor of exhaustion is gone. The invisible ceiling is gone. There is only the vast, breathing expanse of the present moment. There is only the unfolding miracle of consciousness exploring itself. You are not trapped. You never were. You are the universe, waking up from the dream of separation. You are the one soul, wearing a billion faces, finally remembering how to open its own eyes. And the hardest part is still ahead. The return is what the spiritual ego cannot accept, because the ego wants a grand finale. It wants a throne. It wants to be recognized for the immense suffering it endured during the dark night of the soul. It wants the world to stop and applaud the breaking of the seals. But the world does not stop. The world continues its chaotic, dense rotation. The bills arrive. The body ages. The seasons change. And this is exactly where the mastery is proven. The true master does not demand that the world reflect their enlightenment. The true master reflects their enlightenment onto the world, silently, invisibly, without requiring a single ounce of validation. You must embrace the anonymity of the awakened state. You are a cosmic secret walking in plain clothes. You are carrying the frequency of the open crown into the grocery store, into the office, into the quiet moments of the evening when the house is still. You are anchoring the infinite in the extremely finite details of human existence. This is how the karmic density of the earth is slowly, methodically transmuted into light. It is not done through mass awakenings or sudden miraculous shifts in global consciousness. It is done one soul at a time, one broken seal at a time, one silent death of the ego at a time. It is done by people like you, who sit in front of a screen, feel the uncomfortable truth of their own imprisonment, and decide to walk into the fire. You are the vanguard. You are the ones willing to feel the pain that the rest of the world is desperately trying to numb. You are the ones willing to look at the samskaras, to trace the epigenetic scars and to say, this ends here. When you do this, you become a node in a vast, invisible network of light. You connect with every other soul who has made the same choice. You form a grid of zero gravity across the surface of the planet. And as this grid strengthens, the overall frequency of the human experience begins to rise. The suffocating atmosphere of fear and separation begins to thin, but you do not do it for the outcome. You do not do it to save the world. If you try to save the world, you will immediately rebuild the third seal of control. You will fall back into the trap of the savior complex, which is just another mask for the ego. You do it because it is the only true thing left to do. You do it because the alternative, living another lifetime asleep inside the armor, repeating the same loops, dying without ever knowing the vastness of your own being, is no longer acceptable. You do it because the fire is calling you. The loop closes. The end meets the beginning. The hands that you look at are the hands of the cosmos. The breath in your lungs is the wind moving across the surface of the earth. The beat of your heart is the rhythm of the stars expanding and contracting in the deep space of the night. There is no separation. There is no distance between you and the divine. There is no level of consciousness you need to reach, because you are already the consciousness that contains all levels. You have survived the earth. You have survived the water, the fire, the air, the sound, and the mind. You have survived the death of the self. Now, step into the world. Step into the density of the physical plane, not as a prisoner, but as the architect. Not as the victim of the seals, but as the one who holds the keys. The game of separation is over. The era of the isolated ego is ending. The time of the one soul, fully incarnated, fully awake, and fully present in the density of matter has arrived. Breathe, open your eyes, and begin.